I've not done TEDx, but I'll attempt at this point in time. I'll start with why actually I think education is so important for a country like India, especially because, of the kind of past that we had, the kind of history that we had. We were enslaved for 200 plus years, right? And the only way India can progress ahead is by streaming ahead, and actually having a fantastic pace to ensure that people are more empowered through education. Long back, sometime in 2000, I think, Outlook, I was a publisher for Outlook those days. We used to do rating and ranking of colleges those days also, as we do it now. We actually rated a particular institution as one of the best in international industrial interface or some such thing. And we also said that this institution is very, very good, and we rated them based on a survey that was conducted by an outside agency. After we finished the whole thing, I realized that there was one parent and student who came and wanted to meet me because I was the publisher. I obviously allowed them to come in, and these people came in, and the parent said, "Sir, your magazine says that there is 100% placement. It definitely is not the truth, because here is my son who is not placed." That is the moment of truth for me. We believe in a survey where someone submits that 100% placement, we take it as it is, and we move on. And we publish that also, saying, here is an institution which had 100% placement. For me, that was something that was an eye-opener, which essentially said that here is something that we are making as a commitment to our readers, but it may not be the truth. But because of that fallacy in our assumption, there might be someone who's getting sucked into a system which is completely based on a lie. And that is what an Indian parent is. That parent, by the way, had, mortgaged his property to ensure that 15 lakh rupees was paid to this particular college, because he believed that after 4 years, he will get a 100% placement guarantee. I had to really look at this very closely. So I started digging into that whole thing. I'll come back to it later in the day, as I speak. You look at this picture, and I want all of you to please look at this picture very closely. The person there, his name is Kasi. He's from Kanchipuram. What does education mean, and how does education transform is what I'm trying to get at now. This person did not pay back a few thousand rupees, because of which he became bonded labor for 6 years. And not just him, 27 such people. The person you see there is a Tahsildar who was alerted by an activist who was more educated. He understood the rights of people. Right? So this activist alerted this Tahsildar, and this Tahsildar, a good person at heart, went there, and then, because bonded labor is illegal in India, she went there and actually got 27 of such workers released from a wood cutting company. All these people for 6 years, because they did not pay back a few thousand rupees, were bonded labor. And this is not in 90s, it's in 2000. The India that we live in also has that aspect. And unless we understand, acknowledge, and respect that we need to work for ourselves while working for others also, we'll all be, living in these ghettos, which are urban slums that we call ourselves, and don't understand the problem on the other side of India. And that we need to be acknowledging. These two people, what does education mean to you? I told you earlier that in a democracy, the biggest tool of empowerment is education. Your maidservant's son can believe that you can be more powerful than your father and yourself, because they will study well and they will outclass you, and they'll be possibly your bosses at some point in time. And it happens in this country. Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was in Gao, a place in Amritsar in now Pakistan, migrated in 1947, right? His first primary education was in Urdu. So much so that his speeches were being written in Urdu by himself. Gurmukhi or Urdu. His initial text was what he writes with his own hands is in Urdu or Gurmukhi. The Prime Minister of the country. The best resume that the world ever had in terms of a Prime Minister or President. Oxford, Cambridge, you name it. He was a chairman of UJC. He was a chairman of, RBI. Every single institution he understood. And then he kept moving up because he was, first of all, the best student of his class. Dr. Kalam, he used to sell newspapers. His grandparents were very, very rich. And then a bridge opened up and they were into ferrying people from Dhanskodi to Ramanathapuram. And the entire business fell. He was selling newspapers. Right? Went to a school, then moved on to a college, which is called MIT, Madras Institute of Technology. Did aerospace engineering, joined DRDO. But most importantly, he was the best student. These two people exemplify what education can do to you. These are people who became the most powerful people in this country because, first of all, they were the best students in the class. And that you must remember. Biggest tool of empowerment is how you perform yourself in the classroom and moving up, using those skill sets to move up. And these two people exemplify that for the country. And that is what a democracy can do to you. If you're the best student, you move up to the next level and the next level and the next level. And then you can be the prime minister or the president of this country. Now, what is affordable education? When we talk of all these things, we need to understand the larger issue of what we are attempting to achieve, right? The first thing that we must do as a country is to ensure that every student who wants to study would study, which is what right to education allows you to do. We've gone astray over the last few years, is my perception, because you look at the fee of IIM. The fee of IIM in 2003-04 was 2 lakh rupees. It's now 25 lakh rupees. 10 times. For a country which is aiming to achieve its demographic dividend, for me, that's a crime. Here is an IIM which is advocating or advising or doing projects for the government of India of how to be inclusive, how to be transformative, how to be a change maker and all. But they themselves somewhere are failing the nation. And what happens then is, IIM leads the way because other institutions also start growing in fee, because IIM is charging high fee. A public institution charging 25 lakh rupees, then everyone else also follows because it is justified. Right? What does affordable education mean? Last year, 2019-2020 data of NSSO, which is a national sample survey, right? 33% of Indians dropped out of education because of affordability. About 20% people went back to economic activity because they have to sustain their families. That is the country that we're living in. The country that we're living in, when you deal with a higher cost, the merit falls. You look at, for example, the latest, there was a lot of issue that happened on the medical examination and how the papers were leaked, right? Some of you know about that. In that, you would understand that the public education is at 5 lakh rupees. But the moment you get down to private education, which is private MBBS colleges, it's a racket. And that racket, the fee is 1.25 crore rupees. It doesn't happen in engineering as much as it happens in medical. So when you have a licensed branch, then, and you control the supply, then those kind of things happen. So we need to focus on affordable education, and that's something that we must be very, very careful about. For example, if you look at the way we have structured our schooling system, the best innovation that India had was Kendriya Vidyalayas. 12,500 schools, right? They compete on equal merit with every single private institution which is charging 10x of them. Right? And when you look at the outcomes, the Kendriya Vidyalayas student and the private school student compete with each other, and the KV student mostly wins. And that for us is affordable education. And India has to deal with that affordable education by ensuring that there is greater supply of public institutions, or ensuring that there are more supply of affordable education in whatever way. Like what you saw of Dr. Singh or Dr. Kalam, but for the scholarships, it was not possible. That right now, as we sit now, there are 3.2 million students who have taken education loans. The total loan portfolio is 1 lakh crore rupees and more. By the way, in my generation, we never understood education loan. I'm 56. We never had education loans. Right? But I'm not saying that, education loan is bad or high fee thing is bad. But if you don't provide equal opportunity for those people who want to study, just because they can't afford to get into a particular place, you need to create an alternate place for them. And that is the responsibility of the government. And that is where we pay taxes for. Other part of it is access to education. Most people in India travel by train, bus, they swim through. In this particular picture, if you notice very closely, this is a place in Orissa or Madhya Pradesh, if I'm not wrong, Rao is the district, where people swim through a particular place to go to a school. And parents do that. The passers-by when they see children, they take them on their shoulders, swim through, ensure that the books and bags are dry enough so that they can go to the school. But they do that every single day. Every single day. That is what education promises, and that's why parents also invest themselves. I was an auditor long back. I used to audit a quarry. The midday meal scheme is the best thing that happened to the country. That's because in the quarry, initially when I was going in, the child would be playing around the quarry with, damn heat, 45, 46, 47 kind of degrees. And in the quarry, it's much more hotter, by the way. Right? But, the mother would be working, at the quarry, and the child would be playing on the floor. With midday meal scheme coming in, these children go to a neighbor school around the quarry itself, what they call balwadis. Right? And there, these children go there, they also eat, they get milk, and they also study. That's the beauty of what we do. We contribute to ensure that those things happen. The day we stop contributing others, the day we stop questioning equity, saying, why money, my money, it creates a problem for it in itself. So always be careful about what you're doing about the whole thing. Right? Now, we talk of India's demographic dividend. All these people, if you notice very carefully, are studying under the street light. Once Dr. Manmohan Singh was asked, why do you have glasses so early in your life? He said, because I was studying under a kerosene lamp. Dr. Maheshwar, the biggest scientist that India had, one of the biggest scientists, he would go to a railway station from 7 to 10, because after 10 o'clock, the light is switched off. At times now, he would know when the train is late, and he would go around that time because only then the light is switched on and then switched off when the train passes by. That's how India studied. You need to understand and empathize and still draw inspiration from the fact that those people did what they did, despite all the circumstances, and still achieved what they could for India. Because in 1947, India did not stand a chance to survive. All this talk that we talk of, we hear of, oh, had we done this? No, this is, when you look back, you could have done many things better. You look at the innovation that happened in education, from 47 till date. The first IIM before 64, the first IIT before 64, the best NIT, first NIT before 64, Kendriya Vidyalayas before 64, this one, midday meal scheme before 64, AIMS before 1964. What are the innovations that we have now? More IITs, more IIMs, more AIMS. We did not innovate. We stopped innovating. Most of the thinking those days was how do you create a public education ecosystem so that India as a country can grow forward. And that happened because they actually innovated. The Kendriya Vidyalayas, 12,000-13,000 at such scale, achieve what they can. And what is the investment by the government of India? 26,000 rupees per student. 26,000 rupees per student is the investment by the government of India. For a country which is trying to reap its demographic dividend, that's very, very small investment. If you see this picture very, very closely, what do you see in there? Thousands of cycles? This is quota. This is quota for you. Thousands and lakhs of students going there to attend coaching classes because they believe that your school education is worth nothing. They have demonetized your school education. Delhi, right now, everyone has to go through CUET as an examination to get into an undergrad program. Earlier it was engineering and medical. Now for pursuing a higher education, you need to go through an examination. What happens for the 2, 3, 5 years of study that you actually had in school, where internals are given a weightage, quarterfinals or whatever, quarterly exams, half-yearly exams, everything has a weightage. Your assignments has a weightage. But that is worth a 0 because you go through an entrance examination. And entrance examinations create a barrier of their own. Students who are studying in government schools can't afford to get into a coaching class. Right? And then the entrance exam tells you that my son who got 70% or 98%, let's assume 95%, it has to be compared with my driver's son who got 70%. Who's better? Who says who's better? He doesn't have coaching. He's sitting in a village in Mandi. He's studying on his own. And my son goes to a coaching institution every single day, has all the facilities. online, offline, everything he has. How do you say this 70% is lesser than 95% here? But that's what entrance exams do to you. They make you into a number. They tell you not to learn, but to crack an examination. They tell you, yes, this can be left out in choice. This has never come in the last few years. They channelize what you learn because they want you to score a mark, and that's important, right? And this is, for me, very important. We, as an ecosystem, have the responsibility to ensure that education is not missold, not misinformed, students are not misled, because Indian population is very vulnerable. I remember when I talked of IIPM earlier, the institution that I spoke about earlier, it fell, right? The thing that was there was that they were selling 100% placement, and there was no 100% placement, there was not even 50% placement. We brought it out. We just broke the hell out of them, right? But the Indian parent is so vulnerable. When I asked them, why do you even not check with anyone else? He said, sir, full page ad aate hain. 100% placement bolte hain wo log. And people believe in that. People believe in the written word. And that creates a problem of its own. So we need to talk of, while we are studying, we should also ring fence ourselves and the people who are vulnerable from falling prey to such mis-selling, such misleading information. And that happens with rational minds, with people who are better informed, who have critical thinking, who can question certain assumptions. And when you do that, in the age of social media, you can actually go to the next level also and talk about it. And which is where I come back. We keep doing certain stuff which is important for the policymakers, like how fair are entrance examinations. Is it fair for example, let me tell you, in school examinations, the girls' children do much better. But you come to entrance examinations, the boys do better at a larger space. And why does it happen? Because the girls are not sent outside their home for coaching. I talked of affordability. Here we talk of cultural bias. Even in medical, 58% students are girls. But the pass rate, dekhiyega, 1:2 against the girls. And that creates its own problem. Of the 566 cities that India had for a particular examination, 331 did not have any coaching institution, 235 had. The 331 had 11% pass rate, and the 235 cities had 89%. Forget about that. At CBSE level, 11% CBSE schools have 59% seats at IIT. 83% of state board schools have only 39 or 40%. That's because CBSE schools, besides the Kendriya Vidyalayas, are owned by private people who also, have a coaching as a part of the system. And this is something that I want to leave you with. What can an educated populace do? This was a picture that one of my colleagues took when I went to one of the court hearings, and I keep going to court hearings for the kind of nonsense that I do for myself. This is the old couple. If you look at the file there, they have a trolley to put the file up there. The papers keep adding. वो बोलते हैं ना तारीख पे तारीख. They've been fighting that case for such a long time, and the old couple keep going around different courtrooms, because they're still fighting a case which has lasted many, many more years, that they cannot carry the files also now. If you're educated enough, if you understand empathy, if you're empowered, if you have the courage to stand up and deal with life, then you bring in equity, you bring in justice, you bring in rule of law. And that is very important. And I end most of these conversations with one simple thing. You are living in a world, this young generation is living in a world where you need to normalize what is supposed to be normal. You assume for a moment that when you're passing by, you actually see one old woman being beaten by a young boy. 50 people pass by, 90 people pass by, one person stops and ensures that that abuse is stopped. That person is a hero. But isn't it supposed to be normal? What is normal is today heroic. You live in a generation where what is supposed to be normal is brought back to normal because all of you, all the 90 people stop and say this cannot happen. Then this becomes normal. Speaking truth to power should be normal. Speaking truth should be normal. It should not be a courageous act. And you people have that responsibility to ensure that this happens. Thank you so much.